你好.
On Thursday, there's going to be a debate on the origins of SARS-CoV-2 featuring Susan Weiss as a panelist. Many people are unaware that Susan Weiss was caught outright lying to the scientific community, to the press, to the public at large about her original opinions of where SARS-CoV-2 came from. In August 2021, U.S. Right to Know obtained emails relating to an article called "No Credible Evidence Supporting Claims of the Laboratory Engineering of SARS-CoV-2." This was published in February 2020. It was downloaded 75,000 times by the end of the year. Its main gist was to smear the lab leak hypothesis as a conspiracy theory. It has such lines as, "Currently there are speculations, rumors, and conspiracy theories that SARS-CoV-2 is of laboratory origin. Some people have alleged that SARS-CoV-2 was leaked directly from a laboratory in Wuhan. In our view, there's currently no credible evidence to support the claim that SARS-CoV-2 originated from a laboratory-engineered coronavirus." Now, the backstory of this editorial is insane. It is meticulously covered in one of the threads by Gilles Demenouf by way of the documents obtained by U.S. Right to Know. The editorial was received and accepted on the same day by a journal called Emerging Microbes and Infections. The emails reveal that Sean Liu, the editor-in-chief of the journal, initiated and co-authored this editorial. He reaches out to Shanlu Liu from Ohio State and Lishan Su from UNC. These names are incredibly similar. It's easy to mix them up, so good luck. Liu recruits Linda Safe, who's also from Ohio State, and who was also a signatory on Daszak's Lancet letter, and Susan Weiss from University of Pennsylvania. This is now an editorial whose main crux is to call the lab leak hypothesis a conspiracy theory that was received and accepted on the same day by a journal whose editor-in-chief secretly co-authored it. There's even an effort to recruit Peter Daszak to the piece, but the email trail runs cold. They did get Ralph Barrick to contribute to the piece. They do this without mentioning that Liu is the instigator and co-author of this. So Barrick is on board, he makes a few edits, but he makes it clear that he doesn't want it known he is a part of this. The next silent contributor is none other than the Bat Lady herself, Shijing Li of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Liu was forwarding Xi's comments by February 16th. We don't have the emails showing how she was contacted, but we have the files of her edits. The next whopper in these emails is that on February 14th, Liu discloses a recent accidental leak of SARS-CoV-2 in Beijing. He says, quote, "Feng Gao is my buddy in the Beijing Virus Institute. We're from the same lab where my former director has now been infected by SARS-CoV-2. Liu only forwards this to Su and to Liu, but does not tell Linda Safe or Susan Weiss about it. This is the same Beijing lab that had leaked SARS-1 4 times in 2004. The CCP covered up the first 2, and the World Health Organization never investigated this. So now this is an editorial whose main crux is the lab leak is a conspiracy, accepted on the same day that it was received, written by the editor of the journal that accepted it, in secret, featuring comments from Shijing Li and Ralph Barrick, and whose co-authors know of a contemporaneous lab leak of SARS-CoV-2. What Liu does mention to Susan Weiss is the changes in the draft, especially the title, to emphasize that the virus is not engineered, whereas before it was emphasizing that this couldn't be from a lab, full stop. Liu says to Weiss, "We can't rule out the possibility that it came from a bat virus leaked out of a lab." Weiss, who is clearly troubled by this, points to the question of bat viruses that are unpublished that could have led to this. Note that Liu still doesn't mention the Beijing SARS-CoV-2 lab infection to Susan, but here he drops a pretty big one. He says, "There are many undisclosed samples and viruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology." Now, you would think, hearing this as a scientist, that you would no longer want to sign on to an article that argues the complete opposite. Did Susan's hypothesis get challenged by the commonsensical probability that a SARS lab that removed its SARS database had an unpublished SARS backbone that led to the SARS pandemic that emerged in the same city as that lab? Once one acknowledges the basic possibility that this could have happened, the entire argument for the natural origins of this virus crumbles immediately. By February 16th, all the authors are putting their hopes into recent claims that a 99% similar coronavirus was found in pangolins. You see, at the center of Susan's concerns was the fern cleavage site. This is the same concern that Bob Gary had, Christian Anderson, Eddie Holmes. Bob Gary famously said he couldn't figure out how this 12 nucleotide insert could happen in nature. A 99% similarity in the pangolin virus would mean that there's probably some version of the fern cleavage site there that would make the SARS-CoV-2 fern cleavage site look less conspicuous. Unfortunately, the 99% similarity claims were bogus, and these sequences were not close at all. So no breakthrough, no fern cleavage site, no intermediate animal, no closer sequence to RATG13, nothing. And this is admitted to by Susan Weiss in her emails. So despite this pangolin nothing burger with the side of fraud, the commentary isn't revised. The sentence about the data not yet being published and the links to the article claiming a 99% similarity to SARS-CoV-2 are kept in the commentary. She then asks Liu what his thoughts are on it and is seen saying that the fern cleavage site may have been engineered. So it's interesting because the crux of the article is arguing the complete opposite of what she is saying. So this is now an editorial whose main crux is the lab leak is a conspiracy theory that was received and accepted on the same day by a journal whose editor secretly co-authored it and instigated it, that features commentary from Shijing Li and Ralph Barrick, whose authors know of a contemporaneous SARS-CoV-2 lab infection in Beijing, who can't rule out the possibility of unpublished backbones leading to this, and whose co-author Susan Weiss is openly worried that the fern cleavage site of the virus is engineered. Now, given this information, it's fascinating to observe Susan Weiss lying to fellow scientists, to the media, and to the public, thinking that her emails would never surface.
You mentioned a furin cleavage site and how SARS Classic does not have one while SARS-CoV-2 has one. So how did this furin cleavage site originate? Is it recombination, mutation? What's the hypothesis?
That's the one thing they don't talk about in that paper is where the furin site came from. But certainly there are a lot of coronaviruses that have furin sites. It's really not unusual. Like all the lineage A viruses have it and all the lineage C viruses have it. So we don't really know. And that's I think that's one of the suspicious things that the conspiracy theorists talk about, like that it has this site, but I don't think it means a lot.
The paper details why this was not created in a lab.
I was only an extra on this paper.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that anyone even had to study this to try and disprove such a conspiracy theory.
Well, I mean, it doesn't look like anything that anyone's ever created in the lab. That's one thing. I mean, like the sequences are across, say, the genome, we call the genetic material. They're similar to SARS, but they're different all along. And no one could even really imagine how to make such a successful virus.
Well, so you touched on it. Let's ask directly what your thoughts are about the theories of the origin. There's a conspiracy theory that it was leaked from the lab. I know you have thoughts about that, and we'd love to hear from you about that.
There's kind of two conspiracy theories. The most far out one, I think, is that some evil scientist generated it in the lab with by genetically modifying something. That's totally, I don't think any scientist would believe that one, because in order to, quote, make a virus, you have to start with a virus. You don't make them de novo. They have these very long 30,000 units of genetic material. And so you have to start with a virus that exists, and then yes, you can modify it. But this doesn't look like a modified virus. So I think we can really throw that one off the table. I can't even tell you how many different reporters and news people wanting to know, was it man-made? Was it, all that kind of conspiracy theory stuff? It's certainly not man-made. Or human-made. That's ridiculous. That's really ridiculous.
Correct.
Nobody could really, how could anyone figure out how to design a diabolical virus?
Exactly.
Seriously, it's so close to SARS but it's different all across the genome. So it's clearly not like made from something else.
That is deceit. That is academic fraud. That is participating in covering up the world's largest industrial accident of all time. Susan Weiss must be made to address this at the debate.
Go by they say this or that, like look for the actual information. I think that's the most, and listen to Tony Fauci. I think he's probably the most up on all this kind of stuff of anyone in the country. And I think he tells it straight like it is.
哎，我先走了，下次再聊，拜拜。